seventh meeting of the Senate Standing Committee on Judiciary. I know we've got some members coming from A&R and other committees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we might have right at a quorum. Plus, there's Karen. Were you there just a moment ago? 1, 2, 3. You do count. You do. Well, you certainly count. Party matters not. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll. Yeah, no kidding.
Senator Berg. Senator Kerr. Senator Neal. Senator Schickel. Senator Schroeder. President Stovers. Senator Turner. Senator West. Senator Wheeler. Senator Carroll.
Here.
Chairman Westerfield.
Here. Seeing that we have a quorum and we are authorized to do business, anybody have any guests in our enormous crowd this morning they need to recognize? Judge, good to see you again. Thanks for being here. Judge, good to see you again, both of you. Anybody else? No? All right. Glad to have you all. All right, Senator, you're first. As promised, I'm sorry we couldn't get to you last week, but come on up on Senate Bill 110, a bill, members, that you've seen before, an act relating to air property and making an appropriation therefor, sponsored by our friend and colleague, Reggie Thomas. Senator, you have the floor. You or your guests can introduce yourselves and then jump right on in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's good to be before the Judiciary Committee this morning. I have several witnesses present. There's a Mr. Ben Orzeski, who's the General Counsel for the Uniform Laws Commission. He's online there in Chicago. I have Mr. David Gambrell, who's the Lincoln County PVA. Both of them will testify here today. I have with me Mr. Shea Brown, who's with the Fayette County Clerk's Office, and Mr. John McGarvey just walked in, and he'll say a few words. So,
well, you had your votes. Not sure you got them anymore. I want to give a special thanks, Senator, to you for being patient and flexible last week, but to your witnesses who I know drove over, made time to show up, and then sit through a meeting only to not have the bill called. And I'm sorry for that, but that's how things often happen, and we just ran out of time with another committee. Today shouldn't be that problem.
Okay.
I'd like it still to keep it to about 30 minutes on this bill, since it's something we've seen before.
Right. I think
but I want to thank everybody.
I think it should go no longer than 15 minutes. And let me begin by setting the stage as to the problem and why this legislation is so needed here in Kentucky. Okay. What we have in this state as a problem is a situation, and this affects every area of the state, where you have property that was put in the deed to some descendant many years ago. And then they died and passed that on to their families. No probate, no will. The families just inherit the property by intestate succession. And then those individuals die. And then it goes on to other heirs. And before you realize it, Mr. Chair and committee members, you have situations where you've got a piece of land that's now owned by well over 100 individuals. In some cases, 200, some cases even more than that. And because there's so many fractional interests in that property, the land really has no value. No one's going to buy a fractional interest in property, so it's not really marketable title. And so as a result, because the land doesn't have any value, its taxable value is insignificant, and the land cannot be alienated or sold. And so it's just sitting there with no real use. Okay. And you have two options here in Kentucky right now under Chapter 381. You have two options. One, if you want to sell the property, you can go into the circuit court and request that the property be sold. Okay, but then you have to try to find all the heirs, and that takes time. And then if you get enough people in court so that you can sell the property, then that property has to be sold through the master commissioner, which means people come to the master commissioner sale, which is the auction, highest bidder wins, and the property's then sold. There's no process to keep the property in the hands of family members. Okay, that's one option. The second option, if you do want family members to acquire the property, then once again, you've got to locate all of those heirs. You've got to prepare what we attorneys call affidavits of descent, which shows the chain of title from one owner to the other. And then you've got to file those in the courthouse record, which is extensive. Then once you do that, then you've got to prepare several scores of deeds. Okay. And then once you get those deeds prepared for these individual interests to someone, then at that point, when you do all of that paperwork, which takes an enormous amount of time, costs an enormous amount of money, then you can get the property in the hands of one of the heirs. Okay, I've done this twice, and I will tell you, it is protracted. It is extremely time consuming, and for the person who wants to purchase the property, it's very costly. Okay. What Senate Bill 110 does today is that it streamlines that process significantly by saying, and the focus again is on sale. For someone who wants to sell their property, they can go into court, say, I want to sell their property, and then under Senate Bill 110, then other family members can come forward and say, I want to buy the property. Okay, and then the process is set up by which family members who want to keep the property and buy it can acquire that voluntarily from other family members, and therefore hopefully put the property in the hands of one, maybe two buyers. And so now it's a win-win situation. You have land that's marketable. Again, it can be alienated to other potential buyers. And two, its value has increased because of its marketability, which means that it provides more tax revenue for both this state and for the county. And that's the purpose of Senate Bill 110, is to make that process much smoother, much easier, so that we can have more marketable titles in this state, have higher revenue in this state, and most importantly, for my interest, keep the property that was acquired over 100 years ago in the family. At this point, Mr. Chair, I will stop. I'm going to turn it first over to Mr. Ben Orzeski, who testify about Senate Bill 110 because it's been used, quite extensively and passed in other states. And then I'm going to let David Gambrell, who has some real life experience here, as a PVA in a county that's had this problem. And then I'll close with Mr. McGarvey.
Ben, go ahead and unmute and speak to the group here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
the chairman of the committee, Mr. Orzeski, is chief counsel of the Uniform Law Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Westerfield, members of the committee. Appreciate you considering Senate Bill 110 today, which would enact the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act in Kentucky. This bill is based on a uniform act that has been adopted so far in 18 states. There are 8 more states, including Kentucky, that have bills pending this year. It's been adopted it's been gaining momentum being adopted in more states lately because it's proven to work exactly as intended in the early adopting states where this problem was seen and the solution devised through this Uniform Act. What the bill does is it puts in 3 due process protections for families who find themselves in the position of owning property as heirs of the original owner, and through no fault of their own, because the original owner did not do estate planning, they find themselves in a vulnerable position where they could lose their land in a forced court-ordered partition sale. What the Uniform Act does is it puts in place a few simple due process protections. First, if a partition of heirs property comes before the court orders an independent appraisal of the property to find out what its true value is. Second, it has the buyout opportunity that Senator Thomas just described, where the heirs who want to hold on to the property can buy out the share of the person who's requesting a sale at the appraised value of that share. Third, there's a strengthened, if no one exercises that buyout option, there's a strengthened preference in the law that already exists in Kentucky law, but this bill will strengthen it, for partition in kind or physical division of the property into separate parcels when that's possible. It's not always possible with a single family home, but it might be if we're talking about farmland. And then last, if the property does have to be sold, what the bill says is rather than order an auction sale, which is designed to sell the property quickly, we want the property to be listed on the open market at its appraised value for a reasonable period of time, see if it sells, and try to get the highest return possible for the heirs on their inheritance. In the states where this has been adopted, it's working as intended. The number of partition cases that was filed has gone down since the act has been introduced, and the reason for that is there is less incentive for an outside developer or speculator to acquire a share of the heir's property and then request partition, hoping to force an auction sale and acquire the property for below its actual value. I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee about the bill, but Kentucky would be Kentucky would be in good company with many of the states in the region that have adopted this and are considering it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate it. We actually do have a question from Senator Wheeler. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I like the idea behind this bill. I've talked with Senator Thomas, and I guess some concept that it seems like I've run into in the past. I don't do a lot of this work, but as a country lawyer, you run across a little bit of everything every once in a while. Does Kentucky, to ensure that there's a fair value of sale in Kentucky, do they not, when they hire master commissioners that goes to the courthouse steps, I know they usually do appraisers, does Kentucky's right of redemption apply in these places where the heir can redeem the property and if it doesn't sell for, I think, what appraised value or something like that?
Right. Senator Wheeler, that's an excellent question, and I don't want to get too legalistic here. But your question goes to KRS 426.530,
Okay.
And you're right. That does say that if the appraised value is not 2/3 of the actual value, there is a right of redemption within a 6-month period.
Yeah.
However, I really think as a practical matter that's not going to occur here because there are appraisers that are hired in this process. There are 3 appraisers. And they are to appraise the land at fair market value. And I assume that their fair market value that they're going to appraise under the statute is not going to be less than 2/3 of the value. So the answer to your question, the right of redemption still applies, but I think as a practical matter, it's never going to arise because whatever the property is going to be acquired for is going to be more than the 2/3 of the appraised value. But that's an excellent question.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gambrell, I think you were going to be next.
All right. Good morning. I testified on this last year, so I'm not going to try to rehash that. Senator Wheeler makes an excellent point, and that's the way things should work. I want to share one of the reasons that I feel like this is crucial. Something happened recently in my county. Is there was a situation where there were so many heirs, and there was confusion about who was going to pay that tax bill, and it got bought by a lien company, and they eventually forced the sale, and the warning order attorney said no heirs could be located, and this property sold master commissioner sale by a speculator at about a quarter of its value and turned around and sold it for about a quarter of its value. As Madison said, if all men were angels, we'd have no need of government. So this is an example of what is happening. I wish I could say that this was an exception, but I have seen this more than once, not just in my county, but in other counties. I've seen this occur. And since the last testified, I've also found out the Trump administration had actually directed FEMA, if I'm correct, to start recognizing heirs land as far as FEMA recovery. They have vested heirs property with the ability to get FEMA relief, which is a major step. And the 2018 Farm Bill that President Trump signed into law also has some provisions that's addressing heirs land. So there is a national recognition of how serious this problem is. In my county, we have 284 properties. When I last testified, I said about 300, and I've gotten a new tax roll system that allows me to more precisely research these. Well, and I'll also point out, Senator Thomas, much of this has nothing to do with the fact that people didn't do good estate planning. Shay Brown, who is there, the last fee simple deed to the house that he grew up in was 1867. His great great grandfather purchased the land through his joining bonus for the Union Army, and his great great grandfather had a will, but the environment at the time was it made it very difficult. So much of this stems from inaccessibility to the same opportunity to conduct business as everybody else. And a lot of poor whites in my community have had that because they just don't have resources, they don't trust. And so this has not been, this heirs land situation is not the result of people not taking care of their business. This is the result of people not being afforded the opportunity for whatever reason to take care of their business. And it rises to the level without some sort of special help. We're going to let that sit there, and it suppresses wealth, and it costs all of us money. The prime example, if you own real estate, if you notice your property tax bill for 2021, you'll notice that state rate on there was 11.9 cents, and in 2020 that was a higher rate. Because under House Bill 44, as values rise, rates come down. Well, so in reality, everyone who owns property in Kentucky is paying higher taxes because of this situation with heirs land, because you're suppressing wealth. You can't build a new house. Shay's cousin wants to restore the family home that Shay grew up in, but you can't go to the bank and borrow money on property that was in great-great-grandfather's name. And so all you can do is cash in hand repair that house. So this is a very real problem that affects all over the South, all over rural Kentucky, all over urban Kentucky. I've talked to my counterparts in some urban areas, and they have the same problems. And so I want to encourage you to pass this. This is not going to end all the problems, but this is a great tool to assist those that want clear title to their land.
Senator, before you jump in, I'm going to let Senator West ask a question, and then Mr. McGarvey, you can speak.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple quick questions. Reading through the bill, my first question pertains to the trigger. So the trigger to this whole thing is mainly if someone files a partition action. Is that
correct? Partition for sale.
Partition for sale.
They want to sell their property.
Okay. And then just help me, is this going to flow like many, let's say like a normal partition action would flow, or a foreclosure would flow, where the court is involved and then the main agent of sale would still be the master commissioner? It would all kind of, would that stay the same, or?
No, you would not have a master commissioner in this instance. If a family member wants to come forward and acquire the property, then the family member would come forward, say, I want to buy the property, and then the court would make sure that sale takes place in an orderly process in which the money is put in, the person buys that property based upon the fair market value of the appraisers. Based upon the fair market value of the appraisers.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
No problem. Are retained by the court, and then that money would then be dispersed to those willing sellers based upon their fractional interest divided by the fair market value of the property. So a master commissioner would not be involved, and that's critical, Senator West, because again, the biggest win out of this is that you are allowed to keep the property in the family chain, the family legacy.
Yeah, and just I've just been told that I'm now chairman, so I can recognize myself.
Okay.
Just to finish that question, here's where I was going with this. So most of this process is handled within the court.
Yes.
And then the only way you would really reach a master commissioner is if, the court has assigned a realtor to take care of it and an appraiser and all that process. And then once you get to that end, if you can't find a buyer after a certain amount of time, then theoretically it could flip over into a master commissioner. And that at the end of the road.
Yeah, if you have that situation, then yes. If you have no family member that wants to come forward,
Yeah.
and buy the property, then you're back to Chapter 381 where
Gotcha.
we are right now.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, did I understand you to say earlier that you'd handle the sale of jointly owned property?
I've done this twice in my legal career. Twice.
All right. Isn't it true that we have a section now already in the statute that takes care of the horse farms? There's a specific statute for people who own horse farms about selling and that. Are you familiar with that?
I am not familiar with any particular statute that deals solely with horse farms.
Okay. As a lawyer who's handled many of these jointly owned property sales, one that our family had 380 some heirs. I'm going to ask you this question. Isn't it under the process now that any heir, not an ascendant, a descendant, a collateral, which is defined in here that's going to have ownership, strictly heirs that inherited the property, have a right, one person, to hire one lawyer and go and file a civil suit in the circuit court, and no other heir can then jump in and spend a lot of money for appraisers, commissioners, brokers, that's all listed in this bill, and have the property sold at the courthouse steps, and every heir that wants to can join in and team up so that if 80% of them join up, 50% of them join up, the property sells, and they get to buy and bid on that property. Is that a true scenario of the existing law?
Senator Turner, the way you've described it is correct. But let me tell you why this is a better bill than what you proposed. I understand your question.
All right, can I ask you another question?
Well, let me answer your question first. I mean, I want to answer your question.
All right, sir.
I'm willing to answer your question. Okay. Under the current legal scenario, all of that is true. You can have someone who has a fractional interest or a minor interest come forward and say, I want to sell my property. Okay. And, they can file suit with other heirs. And you're right, other heirs can come in and say, I want to join them. I want to sell my property too. Okay. If the court gets the parties together and it goes to the courthouse steps, the danger, and I want to use that word seriously, the danger is that you could have someone, a speculator, some other individual come forward and say, I'm going to be the highest bidder. I'm going to buy that property, and I'm going to acquire that property who's not a family member, who's not a descendant, who's not an heir of that family. That's the reality we live in today here in Kentucky. That's the answer to your question.
Well, now under this bill, you're changing the names of people other than heirs to be involved in this, are you not?
I'm using the term heirs,
Heirs?
but the difference between my bill and, again, the current statute, and this is what I articulated at the very beginning of my discussion, is that this bill allows family members, someone who's a member of your family, second cousin, brother, you name it, to come forward and say, if you don't want this, I want to keep this in the family name, okay? And I want to pay you a fair market value. And the court's either going to hire appraisers or they're going to use a broker to acquire the highest value for that property, okay? And if you want to sell it, and it's got to be a willing seller, you can sell it to some family member who wants to say, okay, I think it'd be good to keep this in the family name. And that's the difference between my bill, which would create a new process here in Kentucky, and current law. And to be clear, let's take this a step further. If For instance, you love the family land. Okay, you say I really don't want to sell. I want to keep part of my family land. This bill, Senate Bill 110, gives you another option. It says you can partition this in kind. Okay, if the property, and again, single family residences like Mr. Orzeski said, probably not going to work. But this is lovely farmland, a lake or pond, in a beautiful location, a mountainous region of Kentucky, or part of the western Kentucky plains. You can partition this property, and the court would attempt to partition it so that it wouldn't affect the value of the entire land. I want to say fee, but I don't want to get too legalistic here. And you can partition this and keep a portion of it. You have that option under Senate Bill 110.
Another question, if I could, Mr.
Yeah, we're going to need to move on. Please make it quick.
Isn't it true under the existing law that you're taking a second cousin who's not a true heir in that property chain, though, aren't they? They're not, are they?
Well, Senator Turner, you know as well as I do that a second cousin can be an heir. Second cousin is an heir.
But under this bill, they don't have to be an heir.
No, this bill deals solely with heirs, people who have fractional interest in this property. Now, if you're talking about someone who was married to someone, and then they die, and now their wife acquires property, and through intestate succession, their wife has an interest, yes, those individuals may not be blood lineage, but under this particular bill, they would still be heirs because they acquired it from a spouse. That is true.
That's all based upon the time restraints that I was just advised.
Okay, Senator Turner, thank you. And I'm going to assume chairmanship. Chairman Westerfield had to step away, and Mr. McGarvey, we'll let you close out the conversation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to give you due respect for your third position down in chairmanship. I'm John McGarvey. I'm one of your Uniform Law Commissioners, legislative liaison for Kentucky for the Uniform Law Commission, and that's why I come to you today. One of the things Senator Turner mentioned was the ability of 60, 80 heirs to get together and go bid. I think a lot of you all know I'm basically a bank lawyer. 60 or 80 heirs are going to have trouble getting the financing put together in order to meet the payment requirements in a master commissioner's sale. That's just a practical matter. That's right. But I'm not going to double up on things that have already been said. I'd like to tell you the breadth of support, not geographically, as Ben Orzeski has indicated, but some of it from organizations. I have here a letter from the American Bar Association, section of Trust and Estate and Real Property, supporting the act. The Council of State Government supports the act. The NAACP supports the act. The Farm Bureau helped get it enacted in Illinois and Mississippi and is working on getting it enacted in Tennessee. There's no liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican angle on this. I don't know of any prominent organization in the field that doesn't support it. And it's narrowly focused. It's an opt-in situation where it applies only to a partition action where the property is titled as tenancy in common, has at least one co-tenant who acquired the title from a relative, has at least 20% of the ownership interest traceable to a family member, and without a written agreement governing partition. That's the limited circumstances in which it applies. The Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act gives a state's residents, Kentuckians, preference on certain federally backed farm loans. I think that's something that could benefit all Kentuckians who own rural land if we enact this act today. Again, I don't want to repeat anything that's been said. I'll stop and take any questions that you might have. We also have Mr. Turney Berry with me today, who is another Uniform Law Commissioner from Kentucky and our expert in the trust and estates area. If any questions, delve into that area.
Very good, Mr. McGarvey. Are there any other questions right quick before we close this out? Gentlemen, any other statements that you all need to make before we entertain a motion Senator Thomas, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have a motion on the bill. A second? We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Berg.
Aye.
Senator Carroll. Senator Kerr. Senator Neal. Senator Schickel.
Aye.
Senator Schroeder.
Mr. Chair, explain my vote.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I vote aye today. Senator Thomas, I think we've discussed. I just want to get another set of eyes on this. It's not an area of law I practice, so appreciate your time and all the information you've provided me. But I vote aye today.
President Stovers. Senator Turner.
Vote, please.
Please proceed.
I'm going to vote aye because I told my good friend I'm going to let him get it out of committee, but I'm going to try to kill it later. So, because
There are some things better not told.
that's right. And just like the gentleman last testified, it says co-tenants. It don't say heirs who own. I will work on, but I promised you might do that. Did I not? So,
Senator West.
I'd like to explain my vote.
Proceed, please.
I vote aye, and I disagree with the chairman. I like honesty, prefer up front. That's how I like knowing what's coming. So, but I have no ill intent, and I vote aye in committee. Thank you.
Senator Wheeler.
Aye.
Chairman Westerfield.
Very good. On a vote of 7-0, the vote bill passes with favorable expression. And congratulations, Senator Thomas, on getting this bill out of committee. It doesn't look good from this point forward, though. The next bill that we have on the agenda is Senate Bill 114, and this was Senator Westerfield's bill related to the disposition of catalytic converters and other items containing metal. We're going to pass on this bill due to Chairman Westerfield's departure. And with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion. Stand adjourned.